Well, week one of the XFL is in the books, and San Antonio wins the attendance contest after week one, even if they didn't win the game. What a game they had against St. Louis. The Brahmas had more than 24,000 people on hand at the Alamo Dome. And at the game, XFL owners Danny Garcia and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson announced the XFL championship will be played there on May 13th. Okay, that's the final game of the season. It will be on ABC. The first game of the season was on ABC in Arlington, and that's all. The Renegades topped the Vegas Vipers 22-20, and on the field for that one was ABC and ESPN's Katie George. All right, let's bring in Katie George now. And Katie, you have done it all. You've done college football, college basketball, F1, volleyball. Am I leaving something out? I know we were going to talk about the XFL, but you have covered everything.
Yeah, it's been a busy couple years, I feel like, and they keep adding more and more to my plate. I feel like anytime I get a call from one of my bosses, I'm like, what are they going to put me on next? And that happened last summer. They said, how do you feel about lacrosse? And I was like, my brother's played in high school, but other than that, I don't know a whole lot about it. And they were like, well, we think we're going to have you do that this summer. And it was very similar with the XFL when I got the call that said, hey, we've acquired this property. We think it's going to be great, and we're going to put a lot of resources and money behind it because we believe in this ownership and this partnership, and so we'd like you to do it. And again, for me, I was like, sure, the XFL, is that the way like players wear mics and coaches were mic'd up and you could hear a bunch of it, and there was access and interviews in game, and I had to kind of refresh myself on what the XFL was. But I will say I bring up lacrosse because the PLL, which is a professional lacrosse league, they modeled a lot of their access after what the XFL had done in 2020 and then way back when, in I think its first iteration, which was 2001 maybe. Yeah. And so I felt like I kind of got my feet wet with interviewing a player like right after a goal or interviewing a coach in the middle of a game, which is new and different and a little bit jarring and kind of like stressful for me because if things aren't going well, you have to go into the lion's den. So I had a little bit of an idea of what it was going to be like on Saturday for the opening weekend of XFL, but it was a lot of fun.
But how was that first experience there in Arlington?
It was a lot of fun. It was cold, first and foremost, which I think certainly added to maybe only 12,000 fans being there. But it was a really cool product. I didn't know what the football was going to look like, right? Like these are guys who are on the fringe. Some of these guys have played in the NFL, all pro players, by the way. We had a couple in our game and they're trying to make it back, or there's some guys who just got out of college and they're trying to get onto an NFL roster. And so I was curious, what was the football product going to be like? And I was actually impressed. I thought, yeah, there were some moments where that looks like a guy who should be playing in February. And there were moments where that's what we see on a Sunday. And there were some highlight moments, highlight catches, throws that I was really impressed by. Having Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and Danny Garcia and Jerry Cardinal, the owners, there on the ground was, I thought, really cool. I mean, gosh, The Rock walks anywhere and people are losing their minds. And I did get to touch his bicep at one point during an interview. So that was cool.
You got to talk to so many players and coaches. But you got to talk to Danny Garcia and The Rock. That was pretty cool.
I know. That was probably what I was most nervous for because the other stuff, like you can't plan, right? Like I knew going into the game that I had an interview at halftime with those three. And so I had kept thinking about my questions, rephrasing them, overthinking it, of course. But then what's nice about the game is it goes by so fast, which is by design. And then you're just reacting right in the moment. Like you don't know CJ Avery, by the way, a Louisville native, not a Louisville native, but a former Card. He got his first interception and boom, you have to like go run and find him. You're adapting on the fly, which I do think there's a skill set to that, which I think is a challenge and I enjoy challenging myself. So I enjoyed that part, but getting to talk to The Rock, hearing why it was so important for him to become an owner. He and Danny, both were, University of Miami grads, and they needed a league like this. Like he said this, I wish this league existed for me, as I was trying to have an NFL career and it didn't. And now they're trying to give, another opportunity for young players to make it back, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's cool that they call the documentary series Player 54 because The Rock said he was Player 54. And yeah, there were so many opportunities and there weren't those opportunities. Yeah. When he came out, and now you've got now you've got the XFL, the USFL, and hopefully these spring leagues will continue to go. You're a Louisville native. You got to talk to Chris Dishman. He was another Louisville native. So
Yeah.
what is that like though, to be able to? These guys have literally just made a play. They're trying to catch their breath, and you go over it. You said it is a challenge because you have to think about, like, what do I just ask a guy who made this great play? But they always seem to always have a good answer.
Yeah, they do. It is interesting. Gosh, it's such a different dynamic that we're not used to, right? And I think that that's why the XFL and these spring leagues are interesting, because they're trying to push the boundaries, not just from an access standpoint, but they're trying to push the boundaries from a rule standpoint, rule changes that we don't get to see in college football or the NFL. And so I think that that's what makes them unique. And so I had a lot of fun just kind of bebopping around. You can be in the team box, which, like, on a given Saturday in the SEC or in the ACC or whatever college football game I'm covering, I'm like, oh, what I would give to just be able to walk through the team box and really listen into a conversation that's happening with a coordinator and a player, or between two teammates. You can do that. And so you're watching the game, obviously, to make sure you're keeping track of what's going on the field, but then you're also trying to use another eye in your periphery of conversations that are happening so that you can do reports on that. But usually speaking, on a given Saturday, I'll go into a game with like 10 not pre-written, but like pre-made stories where I've talked to coaches, I've talked to players throughout the week. And I know, like, this is a really good story if this guy scores a touchdown. You don't have to do that in this league, because the interviews take precedent over that, because you want immediate accessy moments. And so getting to run up to a guy and say, how'd you bring that catch in? Or what impressed you about that opening series where you score? Like, getting to hear their thoughts when we never in any other league get to do that, I thought was really cool, and definitely separates it. And it was a lot of fun for me. Like, I'm selfish, right? Like, but as a sideline reporter, it was a hell of a lot of fun.
I'm sure. And you get it, it's interactive. It's like,
Mhm.
I think that's what the great thing is. And I like how ESPN and ABC are doing this, where they have, the traditional sideline reporter, and then they have kind of an analyst sideline reporter as well.
Yeah.
So I think that it's just because there's so much action there. And then you've got obviously your traditional booth that's going on with play-by-play and color. And you've seen this too. You don't have to go in with these, as you said, kind of these stories that you think of, because there are so many stories already, and the game is the thing. And I think that's what
Mhm.
attracts a lot of people to spring football, whether it's XFL or USFL or whatever, is because these guys, as you touched on earlier, these guys have stories and they're trying to make it big. And the XFL, though, I felt like, even with 12,000 people there, of course, San Antonio, we talked
Yeah,
earlier,
theirs was
had
awesome.
25,000. It felt big, though, because I think it felt big. The presentation felt big on ABC and ESPN.
I thought it was very professional in the way that it was delivered. And I
Yes.
do think that that was important in, when the ownership group of the XFL was searching for a broadcast partner. And I know that they've used to work with us and Fox in 2020,
Mhm.
and now they're exclusive with ABC and ESPN. But I do think, if you look back in the past, 2001 to 2020, and then now, some of it was gimmicky. Some of it was a little bit laughable. You weren't taking it seriously at all times. And I felt like, the way that it was presented to us, because we've been on so many calls throughout January and February, getting ready for opening weekend and just this season in its entirety, with the XFL, with our own bosses at ESPN who are in charge of the NFL and college football. Like, we very much wanted to do these players and these coaches justice, right? Like, they don't have to be out here, but they're trying to earn a living, make a name for themselves. And, it's our job to document that to the best of the ability, like we would on a Saturday, like we would on a Sunday. And even though the football product might not always be the best, these kids are still putting their, heart, soul, blood, tears on the line. And, you have to be respectful of that. And I thought we did them justice. I felt
Yep.
like, at least in our game, and I got to see some of the other games of the four. The St. Louis Battlehawks one, by the way, talk about the rule changes. Like, the 4th and 15, we had that in our game
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
didn't work out, which I was like, oh, it would have been nice to have seen
Right.
the 4th and 15 come to fruition. But then getting to see it a day later take place in St. Louis, and they were down 15-0, I think, in the fourth
It was
quarter.
15-3, I think, with about a minute and a half left. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
they go down and score, and then you obviously have your pick of what conversion. They go for 3 to tie it. They miss out on it.
Now there.
Instead of the onside kick or kicking off, because that would be stupid,
Right.
they get the 4th and 15 option. And I just think that that was unbelievable that they're able to turn it around and win. And obviously it was an electric crowd at that point too. And I think I
Yeah.
saw somebody tweet like, the NFL couldn't have come up with a better storybook ending. Like it was an
Right.
instant classic for the XFL, but it goes to show, they're trying some different things.
Yep.
Some of it will stick, some of it won't. But I thought that the 4th and 15 was a really cool rule option that they've implemented.
Yeah, and that's something that I think was brought up to NFL and the Rules Committee, and they kind of
Mhm.
passed on it. But now I wonder if this continues to happen, the NFL might say, "Hey, that's a good idea."
Something else that
Yeah,
real quick that I really liked
sure.
was, and I'm curious to see if you liked it, the transparency with going into the replay booth with Dean
Loved it.
Blandino, who was
Yep.
he's mic'd up. He's the rules expert as it comes to the XFL. We go in, we get to hear him going through the replays. He's talking it through. It's the communication line between he and the head ref, and you get to hear that exchange. And I also thought the replays were really quick. Like,
Yeah.
we weren't messing around. We got back to play pretty quickly. But I loved getting to hear his thought process and what he was looking for as he was, was that a catch? Was it not? Was his foot in? Was it not? I just thought that that was fascinating. And I hope maybe the NFL or other leagues are like, oh, this is something that we should consider moving forward.
I think they will. USFL kind of does that. I think the XFL really did it well because not only could you hear Dean Blandino, if you listened on some of the other games, you could hear the officials talking to each other, which
Yeah.
was really good. And they would say like, "Did you see this? Did you see that?" And it was I thought that was great. The transparency was there, and I think what ABC and ESPN are also leaning into is the gambling aspect of that.
Yes.
It's gotten kind of mixed reactions, but I'd say I really liked it because this is what people are. There are people like me who are degenerates who are sitting in their basement like I am right now, who love spring football, obviously, and
Yeah,
like to watch it because of the stories and because of the gameplay, and I love pro football.
for
But
sure.
there are also people who they want to gamble on this, and it's football to gamble on in the spring, and I love that ABC and ESPN has kind of leaned into it.
Yeah, that was another thing that was kind of part of our conversations
Mhm.
leading into the season of let's lean into this. We want to push the envelope in terms of betting, sports betting, and what we discuss. And ask Greg McElroy in the booth what he would do on a certain bet. I don't. That's not a world that I live in. And like I've even
Right.
said to myself, like, oh, for my job, like it would be better. You'd be better served to actually know what you're talking about when it comes. I know like the over under. I know the line. Like
You and me
prop
both.
prop bets.
Right.
Like I think they're cool. Like I'll always take the under in the national anthem of the Super Bowl. But like anything past that, that is not in my wheelhouse. So I hear him talking about him. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I wouldn't have thought about that. Oh, so I'm learning as
Yeah.
we go through the broadcast as well when it comes to sports betting.
Well, yeah, I didn't do too great. I did try my hand at it in the first week. Didn't do too great. I was I
Ah.
batted about 500 on that. But have your expectations of week 2 now, we talked about, I think the quality of the play was above what we thought it would be. I mean,
Mhm.
there was some complaints about offense or whatever, but you have to think about these guys have only been
5
practicing
weeks.
together for like a month, and this is really a lot of their first full contact football.
Yeah, guys hadn't. It was interesting when we were talking to Rod Woodson. He was like, some of my guys haven't played in a live football game in 3 years.
Right.
Some 2, some 1. So they only had 15 practices. Some had like 16 or 17
Yep.
maybe. But we were supposed to have this kind of showcase in Arlington when the ice storm came into
Yeah.
Texas. And as you know, Texas is kind of like Kentucky. We're not very good at,
Right.
handling that kind of stuff.
Half an inch
And
of
so
snow or ice, it's
yeah,
over.
Dallas shut down and we were unable to actually play games. There were going to be scrimmages. We were going to go through broadcasts just to make sure that we were ready and we felt comfortable. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. So there was no live scrimmaging for these guys. They're not tackling a whole bunch because you're trying to get through 15 practices healthy for the start of the season. Think about offensive and defensive line play, specifically offensive line play. Like that takes a really long time to get on the same page, to gel, to mesh well, to know what the guy next to you is going to do in certain situations. And so like, I think the offensive play will come. I know that there was some people who I saw online that were, complaining about it. Well, 5 weeks is not a lot of time. I mean, you think about
Right.
OTA 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, then you have a full preseason camp, and then you have preseason games before you actually, and sometimes the NFL teams still don't get it right, by the way, and all the preparation that they have. And so I
Right.
do think that it's going to continue to trend in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Cincinnati Bengals when they revamped their offensive line, and how long did it
too.
take for that offense? And when they did
Long
gel,
time.
they were great.
Exactly.
What are your expectations of week 2 offensively and defensively? I mean, you saw what you saw there in person. I think we're probably on the same page. It's going to get even better as the season goes along.
Yeah, I think so. I think if we were talking about sports betting, maybe I'd be more inclined to take the overs.
Yes.
We were anticipating some unders over the weekend just because
Yep.
I think when you don't have a lot of time to prep together, defenses are favored in that moment, right? Like,
Yep.
yeah, there is the tackling aspect of how are they going to be, but like overall, I think defenses had the upper hand in week 1. I do think, we've got some really kind of engaging, electric quarterbacks. I mean, AJ McCarron, obviously, he was the one who was able to convert on that 4th and 15 and get St. Louis down the field to be able to win. Like, I do think we've got some really good characters on the offensive side of the ball that I do think that we will see more scoring, possibly for your sake. Maybe bet that over, and then you can be better than 500.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
we'll see.
I might just keep my money in my pocket.
Okay.
Finally, before I let you go, Katie, do you have your assignments here for week 2? I know it's kind of early start this week with St. Louis and
I got to check this. Hold on. I'm
I know we got a
racing for
Thursday
I'm
night
racing
game.
for
Yeah.
I'm at Houston. I've only written them down at Houston. Let's see. That's February 19th. No, we just did February 19th, right?
February 19th. Yes.
I'm actually
No, wait a minute. Yeah.
full disclosure, I'm off week 2 and week 3 because I've got NBA games. So
Oh, of
that's
course.
why I'm not, I'm going to Dallas for the Lakers Mavericks game
Oh,
this
okay. That
Sunday.
makes sense. All right.
So yeah, like when you asked me that, I was like, oh God, where is my crew going? I will not be on the sidelines for week 2, week 3, but I come
All right.
back for week 4 and we go to St. Louis for
Okay. Oh,
that
very
hot.
cool. That's going to be really fun too to see St. Louis at
Yeah.
home, to play in that dome, in which they had they were the XFL leader in the abbreviated 2020. They had the attendance leader, and they were, I think, the leading TV market too. So that'll be
When
fun.
they had their first game in 2020,
Yeah.
that crowd was like, we've been dying for football.
Yeah.
Like it was so cool, and I hope we get to experience that week 4 when I'm back.
Yeah, I think you will. Katie George, you are a busy person, and I appreciate your time. Obviously, you're a busy person. You had to remember where you were going this weekend.
Yeah.
But I appreciate your time, and it was fun seeing you out there on the sidelines, and we'll keep up with you on the NBA and the lacrosse and, of course, the XFL.
Thank you. I appreciate it, John. Great to be with you.